Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast.
Okay, welcome everybody. My guest today, I'm really excited to have, and I think it's somewhat ironic that I get to talk to him. He might not remember this. I remember this vividly. In circa 2004-5, walking into the office, and Kurt looked at me and said, "Hey, have you heard about podcasts?" And I said, "No, what's that?" And he's like, "Well, it's like radio, but people record it in their MP3s, and then there's an RSS feed, and they take the RSS feed and it downloads to your iPod, which dates this, downloads to your iPod, and then like you listen to it on the train, and it's like the cool way to consume like audio." And I said, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Please don't ever talk to me about this again." So naturally, here we are, almost 20 years later. Kurt Mackey, current CEO at Fly.io, former CEO of Things and Stuff. Kurt, how the hell are you?
Good. That's I like that podcast intro, especially because we're on like the second wave of podcasts by now. It's been,
Yes.
it was like, that's stupid, then that's popular, then that's stupid, and now we're back to that's popular.
Yes. I'm always good at catching the second wave of technology. I feel like you are somebody who also does not appreciate a ton of bureaucracy. This is a very strange segue. I just figured out how.
I like it. I don't even know. It's very surprising. I'm curious what's coming. We'll see.
Yes. So how does something like process and bureaucracy meld into startup world where, all if you're like me, all you want to do is cut through all the tape, regardless of the color. And yet there's people around you probably trying to create all kinds of tape to help the business do things without you.
This is a thing that I'm specifically interested in because it's kind of my like second semi-successful go around at this point. Like, who knows what the outcome of Fly is going to be, but it's like I get to at least do it again and see if all my assumptions were correct. At the last company, I was very interested in building a company basically where I'd enjoy being employed by that company, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
built yourself a job.
I built a company full of jobs for me, and then I wasn't getting to do any of those. So it was not like obviously the right way to do things. So like one thing that happened there is it got described to me once as very Lord of the Flies, which I was like, that's offensive. It's not like that at all. It probably kind of was in some ways, where you hire a bunch of people like me, who are very snarky and have strong feelings about things and pretty much just get things done if you let them. There's not like you don't really have to like help them do things basically. And it had a lot of good things about it, but there was some drama. It made it, I think, harder to hire than it needed to be. It was impossible to hire like junior level people into a I mean, I'm sure we could have hired them. It would have been impossible for them to do well because it was like, again, like, unless you're like me, you're probably not going to survive at this particular place.
Mm-hmm.
This company we're doing a little bit differently because one of the things I do believe is that, like, especially if you're growing a company really fast, and we've gone from like 13 to 40 in under a year, and we'll probably double that in the next year. So it's like we kind of have to worry about what happens when 80 people hit this organization.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of reasons it makes sense to hire less experienced people, and a lot of commercially good reasons. I also think if you can hire and make less experienced people basically succeed, it's probably a sign you're building a good organization. Does that make sense? Like, I think there's good reasons to do it. I also think it's like a thing to look for as we're working on this stuff.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that forced me to do was actually think hard about what I thought was important for me as a job versus what I thought was good for a company that we're building. And what I landed on is that was actually important. And one thing that I even at the time, I think it was intuitively important. It's like, I firmly believe if you can distribute decision-making power to the people doing the work, things work better, and you can move faster, and you can roll with changes, and you can like iterate faster on a very complicated problem, which is not the same thing as no process. But what it does is it gives you something that it gives you kind of a framework for when processes might become useful. And so it's not solved yet, and there is like constant pressure to like I have a lot of problems with process, but if you can, like, here we've been able so far to think about process in terms of like how it's actually helping people
Mm-hmm.
to make decisions, to do good work, and to ultimately get promoted. One of the other nice things about hiring less experienced people is you can actually look for reasons to promote them. And if you are able to do that, it's like a good sign again. But I'm still like highly allergic to process. And we just started hiring engineering managers for the first time ever. And anyone who's ever worked with engineering managers probably knows that that position attracts people that are like, I like to accumulate power and create process and not necessarily do things for the reasons that I would like them done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the, yeah, I hate process for the sake of process. I think process that makes people better or makes it safer to fail at things is probably useful.
You have a relatively unique process for hiring people.
We do.
Tell me about that.
We we broadly call it work sample based hiring. So we will not look at resumes. Actually, one point of contention within the company recently is we need to use an ATS, an applicant tracking software package, like
I'm
Lever.
familiar with the acronym.
Yes, right. None of them let you disable the resume on the apply form.
Ooh.
And like I'm like banging the desk, like we will not ask people for a resume. This is important. Like I don't care if it's optional, like we're not putting it there. We can't use it if it has this.
Yeah.
Which is like it's kind of persnickety, but I think it's important for at least what we would establish with candidates.
Mm.
And so what we do for literally everyone who applies is we give them a take-home project to do that's as close to real work here as we can possibly come up with. The best cases of it is actually like a problem we've extracted from existing software here. So like if you're a full stack dev, you're getting a kind of a skeleton Phoenix app right now, and we want you to add a feature to it. And like we design these to be almost like pass fail. And this works really well for developers. And we want people that are good at this thing. It's like someone who already knows Phoenix can be able to do it in 2 hours is kind of the criteria. And someone who doesn't know Phoenix, like we want to give them a lot of time to learn it. I think that if people can finish something like that, really good sign.
Mm.
One of the things about a weird hiring process is that it's surprising to people in a bad way sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we actually lay out for them as like, instead of doing a phone screen, we did this work sample, but this is basically the equivalent time and energy we expect you to send on a phone screen. And if you get past that, we actually do something called a work day, which would be the same as getting interviewed somewhere else, but we're doing something slightly different. But like over time, you're putting the exact same amount of time into hiring here as you would be somewhere else. And then the work day, they actually, in this remote world, they get on Slack with us for 2 hours, and we basically like work on something together. And what happens is two people from the company or in there, one's kind of managing the workday and the other one acts as like their peer, like a person they would be working with. And we basically spend 2 hours shipping a feature or kind of building some kind of landing page, and you can imagine any number of other things that someone would be doing during actual work. And the neat thing there is the person helping them isn't screening. Their job is just to help them do well at this. It's one of these things like, if we can help someone do well at this workday for 2 hours, they're probably worth hiring. Because it doesn't matter how good they were to start. It doesn't matter how much answering question we had to do. It's like, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. It's weird to do a weird hiring process, but I think everyone's hiring process is terrible. And so like, why not?
So are you good at hiring now? Like, how do you feel about your current process?
I don't think it's possibly good at it. I think that this gets into the realm of like, how do you actually judge people's performance? Because hiring is kind of the first part of judging performance. I think good actually looks different than people would expect for this stuff. And so to me, we're getting better at making it predictable. We're getting better at like minimizing negative surprises from hiring through like promotion.
Yep.
Like, but I don't think we'll ever be good at it. It's like I think that we can be marginally better than other companies, and that's a huge win, but that's about as far as it's ever going to go.
Yeah. Well, we'll go to where we started. What's the one piece of technology you wish would go away, die, or is most under-delivering?
Oh my gosh. I actually think the most under-delivering is anything that involves me putting information into a computer. Like, I think one of the weirdest things about remote work is how useless it is for me to draw on like a piece of paper or a whiteboard. And that's still the best way to think about things. And so we've kind of created this world now where like the way that I think I think. I can't actually like use to communicate. It's like so I just don't do it anymore. I think that like pin-based inputs on computers are not doing what they should be. Or there's something else missing there.
Yeah.
And also AirPods should just die.
Well then, on that note,
Yes.
Kurt, thank you very much for your time.
Yes. Thank
It
you
is
for having
always
me.
a pleasure.
This is different, another round, so much more to talk about. Gonna aim to satisfy with help from CacheFly. Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast. The Anycast podcast, brought to you by CacheFly.